belly fat has got to be one of the top complaints of women as they get older. So why does it happen?
And it's to support women at midlife because our cortisol levels are usually very high. It's the stress hormone, and this is the anti-weight loss hormone, one of the more dangerous fats for women.
Whatever beautiful means to you, this time of the month will help you find it and live it. Today, we're going to be talking with Annie Gaudreault. We're going to talk about belly fat, the stubborn belly fat. But before we get into it, I just want to thank everyone for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like, or share for this time of the month podcast. So welcome, Annie.
Nice to be here, Beatrice. Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. But Annie, you're a nutritionist, a health coach, and you have your own health coaching company called Vive Wellness.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, I created Vive because I saw that at midlife, women really needed a lot of support. And there were so few resources out there. I think we have a very parallel story there.
Yes.
And as a nutritionist, there's a lot of people who actually focus on people in their 20s and 30s, but not a lot of people thinking about how do we support ourselves at this really incredible opportune time, and also setting ourselves up for healthy aging.
Yes, I know we often talk about the invisibility of women over 40, but I'm so glad that that's changing. There seems to be increasing awareness, and people like you who've been at it for a while who already knew, listen, we deserve tailored care and advice for our hormones and stage of life. So speaking of that, belly fat has got to be one of the top complaints of women as they get older. So why does it happen?
There are a myriad of reasons for this to happen, right? It's a little bit like in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we're very busy and we take care of everyone else in our life. And the body usually sustains itself until eventually it says, it's not going to be as easy anymore, right? We have hormones that are changing as well. So there's a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One is muscle mass starts to decrease in our 30s. It starts really early, right? So what happens is that we have now a little bit of a difference in ratio. The second of all is that as estrogen drops, one of the things that we don't fully understand from a scientific standpoint, but we tend to accumulate more fat in the dreaded middle, which a friend of mine branded the middle spread. And then the third reason being also that genetics also have a role to play. As we put on fat, whether we are, as we've all heard, apple-shaped or pear-shaped, right? And there's a tendency, most body types, to be putting weight in the dreaded middle.
That dreaded middle. And so what can we do? Is there anything that we can do to minimize the middle spread?
Yes. Actually, this is where the good news are. There are many things that women can do. Now, one of the things that we have to realize as we get to midlife is that the opportunity is for upgrading our diet, upgrading how we are active. So from a nutrition standpoint, that's where we're starting to look at having less carbs, especially starchy carbs, the types that we know about, the breads and the pastas, etc., and really upping our protein, because it leads us to point number 2. The biggest opportunity to combat that loss of muscle is really to embrace strength workout. And I'm really talking about like big weights, really starting to challenge the muscle mass, because that muscle mass is going to also increase the metabolism. It's going to help us burn more calories, which is really going to help. And then the third thing is really addressing stress, which I know we will be talking about as well. But stress management becomes really important as well, because hormones really affect the retention of fat or not.
I'd like to go back to the carbohydrate, because it seems to me that people tend to go all or nothing. You know, we were such an extreme society. So I was like, no carb, no carb, no carb. Can we talk a little bit about what does that mean? You named the main culprits, but does that mean we have to give up the pasta we love? Help us work through the carb.
Oh my God, we could have an entire episode on this, and maybe for the future, note to self, carbohydrate episode.
Yes.
Unfortunately, blueberries and rice are both carbohydrates, right? So when we said no carbs anymore, it really confused people.
Mhm.
So there is no such thing as, well, I don't believe that there is a necessity to remove an entire food group, such as starchy carbs. What we need to understand is to actually, how can we manage those starchy carbs so that they don't affect our insulin levels? So because insulin basically tells the body, we are going to take that excess and we're going to put it, oh, we're back to the middle spread, right? So managing our insulin levels becomes that tool. It is a really critical tool, and it is proven to really help us, not just with weight, but all metabolic disorders as well. So we don't have to give up carbs entirely, but we do need to combine them in a more strategic way.
And does time of day matter?
For some, yes. For some, yes.
And that's also the tough part, because not everything is for everybody or, the same.
Absolutely. It's like clothing. There is not one size fits all in terms of health. So really important to know that you don't have to give it up, but you do need to start managing it differently.
So as we manage it, weight training, heavy weight, walk us through other ways.
Yes.
Other ways to manage it.
Short, intensive training is really an optimal thing. We in our 20s and 30s, some of us, I was one of those people addicted to the cardio and the workouts and the long runs and, Jane Fonda and let's sweat for a long time. And what we're seeing at midlife is that this is no longer serving us as well. Cardio is still important, of course, so important for our heart, very important for women's health, of course. But what's also much more important now is the intensity of the effort and the rest. So shorter, but more really a much higher effort level.
Can you give me an example of when you said heavy weight? Are we talking 20 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds?
Well, it all depends where you are starting from.
Yeah.
So I was not into strength workout myself. And a number of years ago, this is when the science became clear that this was going to be very helpful for us women. I started to do 10 pounds, and 10 pounds was challenging then. I am now in 15 and 20 pounds, but it is an evolution. So for women, it really depends. Start safe, and what will be challenging maybe now won't be a year from now.
That's good. So we're talking about this belly fat that we hate and distributes in strange places. What does the role of menopause hormone therapy have or not on belly fat?
The good news is menopause hormone therapy can help a lot of women. Right? Studies show that it can actually prevent deterioration of bone loss, right? So that's really important for us. Studies don't show that it will actually help us in the fat burn, but it helps so many women in their quality of life that the, let's call side effect is that we're actually able to have the energy and the resilience to tackle putting on straight training, that we're actually being, mindful of our diet. We're not less, we're a lot more likely to make good choices for ourselves. So the science doesn't show that it will be necessarily helpful, especially if women have been active or very fit.
Yeah, I like to call it an indirect. It's not a direct cause and effect, but indirectly, if you're sleeping through the night because you're not waking up because of the hot flash, for instance, then more energy to do the good things for you.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so are there specific health risks that are associated with increased belly fat? And I'm using the word belly fat, but it's really all around our organs and
you're talking about visceral fat. So the visceral fat is the one that really enrobes your principal organs. So that is definitely one of the more dangerous fats for women. That is why we do care about that fat here. It is not about trying to look a certain way, right? It is not about, which is fine, of course, if people, worry about these things. But from a pure health standpoint, definitely we are worried about that. So it is associated with metabolic type syndrome and metabolic type illnesses. So cardiovascular health can be definitely affected, right? this is the number one killer for women. So we need to be worried about that. The other thing also that, we don't realize is that it affects all of those major organs that are so essential for health, right? So we want to be able to be careful because it is associated with diabetes type 2.
Yep.
Right? So all of these things are definitely all connected.
I love that you are highlighting the fact it's not just about how we look. It's a health risk. It's a health risk that we have to manage. So, what are some of the foods that we should be focusing on? You touched upon it earlier, but can you give us an example of, food groups that would be good in managing the unhealthy fat redistribution?
Absolutely. And it really comes down to managing insulin blood sugar levels. So I talked about not necessarily eating differently, but we are changing the ratio of our macronutrients, our protein, our carbohydrates, and our fat. Making protein much more of a priority is really going to help us. So 2 reasons. Protein doesn't raise insulin levels the same way that carbohydrates, especially starchy ones, do. And proteins digest slowly. So they help us feel fuller longer so that I don't get into that hangry state where I am going to fall into, Miss Vicky's or Ben and Jerry. I am going to be much more excited about, I'm going to be making some healthful choices, right? So protein, number one. And then adding to that good fats, which again, for women's health, so important. So here, the one thing that is important for people to understand is it is not fat that makes us fat. They are truly, it's the excess carbohydrates that basically converts into sugar. Excess sugar gets converted into fat. So once we master our insulin levels, the much better off we will be. In fat, don't actually trigger insulin at all. This is the weird little secret about all this. So we want good carbs, we want our vegetables, we want to eat starchy carbs, but in smaller ratio and in making sure that we are having them with our protein and some good quality fats.
So let's list some good quality fats. It's such a good reminder to everyone. Good fats don't make us fat. I love that line.
Yes, absolutely. Well, they've had such a bad reputation for so long. I love to say it. But what we're looking at here, 2 types of fats primarily. Monounsaturated fats in the category of what we call omega-3. Yeah. Some people might be familiar with them, which we find in cold water fish. If we don't eat fish, there's also lots of those sources in plant foods. Flax, for example, making sure they're ground flax.
Ground flax, okay.
That's the only way the body will be able to absorb the nutrient. Extremely good for cognitive health. And for women's health, that is especially important.
Yeah, cognitive health declines with the drop in estrogen as well. So
exactly, right? We've got a double whammy here happening. So I mentioned omega-3s. We're also really very much looking for monounsaturated fats that are found in nuts, in seeds, for example, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, of course, good old avocado. Yeah. Very good. And avocado also digests nice and slowly. So it's being our friend. As we ingest that, we are keeping a really great level of energy in our levels of what I call happy levels, for a long time. So that helps us as well in terms of snacking, etc.
Eggs seem to get a bad rap. Do they still get a bad rap? The cholesterol. Is it bad to eat an egg every day, for example?
Well, that's been debunked, thankfully.
Yeah.
So your body makes a lot of its cholesterol, right? 80% of the cholesterol that it needs. And your body absolutely requires cholesterol because it's fundamental to hormones. Sex hormones are dependent on every cell.
So we should have 3 eggs a day then.
Yes, exactly. Especially if I listen to what my clients are telling me. Definitely.
Yeah, our libido goes down. Let's eat more eggs.
Exactly. So that is definitely not a problem. Eggs are actually an excellent source of protein. And I favor savory breakfasts for my clients because it really sets you up for great sustainable energy all day. So cholesterol, not an issue for eggs. 2 eggs is a good portion, about 13, 14 grams of of protein. So it's a very good way to start the day.
Amazing. Sometimes certain vegetables get varying degrees of bad reputation. Let's take broccoli. Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? But there's the nutrient and then there's the side effects like bloating, for example, which through midlife seems to get worse. Tell us about that.
There's a couple of things at play here.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, definitely, cruciferous vegetables are excellent for us, right? They have a lot of nutrients, are also great for cancer prevention, right? Lots and lots of nutrients. On top of that, they're high in fiber. Fiber is another of our friend as we look for weight loss. This is probably two areas where we are deficient as women, a little bit in protein and fiber. So vegetables, great for fiber. Now, what happens in addition to, maybe hormonal changes is the fact that as we age as well, digestion can start to be a little slower, right? So naturally occurring, just like we talked about muscle mass that decreases, there's also your stomach acids decrease. And this is a bit of a subjective thing. Your levels could be decreasing at a rate that is much more modest than mine. Right? The way that the body reacts is that it compromises the digestion. And when we are not digesting properly, first sign is bloating, because what's happening is that instead of having been digested properly, carbs in the mouth, it starts in the mouth, right? And then in the stomach, what happens is that it arrives in the small intestine and it continues its breakdown through a process called fermentation. Fermentation means air, it's gas. So that is what happens. So one of the very easy things to do, and what I do with my clients in my practice, is digestive enzymes. Supplementing with digestive enzymes will really help with the gassiness.
That's really good. We can just get those at Shoppers or any drugstore.
Absolutely. It really helps. And this is a process that happens, it can start in our 40s, right? Some people are not affected until they are in their 60s, right? This is something that we see with an older population as well. The inability to digest protein, because protein are big molecules. They require the stomach to do its work. But when the stomach acids, the juices, are no longer there in sufficient quantity, basically we've got fermentation and that heavy load, and people say, I just can't eat anymore what I used to. It's because of that effect.
That's great to know. I did not know that. Hopefully our audience can take that with them and keep on eating our broccoli, but without the bad side effects.
Absolutely. We want those fibers.
Okay, so supplements. Let's just go there now, because while a digestive enzyme, I don't consider that in the same category as a lot of the supplements that are being talked about all over. So you can look anywhere on social and there's always someone giving you advice or selling you a supplement. And the evidence to me is unclear. So do you want to talk about the data on supplements for overall health and menopause specifically? Menopause symptoms and...
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is very much a controversial area. And one of the reasons for that is that it's very difficult to research supplementation in the scientific method, because we're trying to isolate how one thing causes something else. And there are so many factors that will affect how the body is using or not using something. And of course, there's all the differences in between individuals. Yeah. So I like to err on the cautious side. So I look at someone's diet and highly recommend fish oil for whom people are not having the proper fish consumption or omega-3s on the plant side, just for cognitive health.
Right.
That has basically been pretty safely tested.
Demonstrated.
Absolutely. And the second category is for bone loss prevention. So again, there's a lot of research that says it does. Some research says, well, maybe it's not absorbed that well by the body, right? So I want to err on the cautious side, because osteoporosis, the statistics are extremely serious. The consequences, again, the side effect of the side effect. So I like to advise people to have a calcium with vitamin D combination to help. The rest becomes a little bit more gray. One of the ones that I'm a fan of is an adaptogen, and it's to support women at midlife because our cortisol levels are usually very high. So cortisol levels, cortisol being a hormone, it's the stress hormone,
Yeah.
and this is the anti-weight loss hormone. So here we are, cortisol is up, and here's our weight, and we want to decrease our weight. The solution is we need to manage stress. Of course, there's many, many different ways to do that. But one of the ones that I like is a herb called ashwagandha. And it takes 4 to 8 weeks to actually start to take effect. But it is very, very good for a lot of women. So if it can help our cortisol level, along with other protocols as well.
Yeah.
Okay? Never just in isolation.
So is it a tea? Is it a pill? How does it get consumed?
Most people will have it as a pill.
As a pill.
Yeah, but it can also come as a tincture.
I do have friends in our community who want to know a few things from you. So I'm going to read some of these questions out. You touched upon, the key, vitamin D and calcium. So, err on the side of caution is your answer for my friend whose mother keeps telling her to take calcium and vitamin D. So that's a good one. Another friend wants to know, does collagen do anything for our health? And if so, what form should they take?
Well, it's a big business, collagen. Very, very big business. And the unfortunate state of affair is that research shows no correlation between supplementing with collagen and necessarily having stronger hair or nails, which is usually connective tissues, etc. So for me, it's a pass.
Thank you. It's a huge molecule. So it's surprising that it would, get ingested and do anything. And yeah, the data's a bit thin on that. So how, when we talk about stress and cortisol and the belly fat, there's some herbals that might work. What are some of your other strategies that you like to implement with your clients and even in your daily practice to reduce the stress?
I always say that midlife is a beautiful, opportune time to really review our life and make adjustments in order to make it work better for us. So this is a really important time for us to actually come back on the to-do list and not be the forgotten piece over here. Or maybe when I will have time, maybe one day, maybe I will go and have that walk, right? So in order to deal with stress, we need to look at the sources of stress and start to prune a little bit of that tree of our life and really try to improve the quality of our life. And then the second part of it is also having more tools to deal with the stresses that we don't have control over. And there are many things that can help us, right? Of course, ashwagandha is a supplement, but a walk in nature is as effective. Movement, so many people are now so clear in terms of the evidence about physical activity in midlife. It is not just good because we want to put on, muscles and protect our bones, but also because it is so good for our mental health and decreasing cortisol, right? Decreasing insulin, all these things that will actually really hurt our overall health. It could be meditation for some, right? It's no one size fits all. I usually invite people to really look at what will speak to you. The most important thing is to actually try things and see how it fits.
Taking care of ourselves, putting ourselves on that list, that's important. When we talk about nutrition, we can't ignore the fact that right now, prices of everything are so high. So how do we make those good nutritional choices on a budget? How do you construct your shopping list weekly to tick all your boxes?
I love, I love spending time in grocery stores. I'm probably the opposite of what people will want to come in and get out. But there are some deals to be had, especially if we think about protein sources. Think about less processed things. Even in the meat department, this exists, right? The chicken thighs with the skin and bone are always less expensive than a chicken breast, for example, right? So looking at those options and then really taking advantage of techniques like braising, stewing, putting things in a crock pot, right? Will actually also give you that bonus of the collagen if you're, cooking with the bones, and you'll get all the nutrients. And then you simply debone it and you'll have, a beautiful meal. So looking at those cheap things as well. Frozen meals that are made from vegetables, for example, are a great way to save on produce. This is where we waste, all of us, it's impossible to not waste. So I'm a big fan of the vegetables. And now there are beautiful mixes and interesting things, cauliflower rice, zucchini, blended with something else. It's really interesting. So there's a lot of creativity there. And legume. Legume is the third category. Yes. There is so much cheap stuff there, even if you're not even buying the dry ones, canned goods. Great protein, very good for fiber. And for those who are having a little bit of digestive issues, the rule is the smaller the bean, the easier to digest.
All right.
So just start with lentils as a way.
And does our body adapt?
Your body adapts. Yeah, that's right. So don't jump into a pound of lentils, but a little half a cup, and combined with other vegetables and some good fats will make you a really great meal. And then canned fish is the last category. Mackerel, there's salmon, there is sardines that are all filleted now. A lot of people were turned off before because of the bones. There are fillets of all of these cuts. And tuna, I would say more infrequently because of the mercury content. But the other sources are great. They're cheap. And they've got all this fabulous good fat as well.
So there really is no excuse, especially for I like to call ourselves busy as F people. Sometimes it feels like it's hard to whip up a good meal, but there are some ways to do it quickly. It doesn't have to be an elaborate meal.
Never. I think that just combining a few of these things just right there, we would have a beautiful meal in 15 minutes.
That'll be I think a topic of another episode. Maybe we need to put up some nice specific meal ideas together.
People will put themselves on massive restrictive diets. Once we learn to manage insulin, we are on our way to weight loss. Intermittent fasting has a lot of benefits for humans. We were also designed for fasting. Loblaws was not around the corner.
No.
It's actually been debunked that our metabolism slows down dramatically.
This book was given to me as a birthday gift from a friend, and I absolutely love it because it's a very engaging and conversational style of writing. The author is Stacy Sims with Celine Yeager, and it's called Next Level, Your Guide to Kicking Ass, Feeling Great, and Crushing Goals Through Menopause and Beyond. Now, I'm no marathon runner, CrossFit expert, but we do recognize the benefits of exercise in menopause, and this book is divided in two sections that I love. The first part is a very simple way of explaining what menopause is and what a hormone transition looks like. And the second part talks about exercises and nutrition that allow us to work with our hormones, not against our hormones. Some of the key takeaways for me were the fact that we probably don't eat enough, and it's the combination of foods that matter. Number 2, weight training, strength exercise for our muscles. It's more important than ever. And lastly, mindset. Mindset matters. We have to be kind to ourselves, and we can be very powerful in our menopause and beyond. If you want to feel better and learn about your body and believe that you can reach new goals at this stage of life, this book's for you.